Hey folks, welcome back to Hangry and Horny. This is the continuation with the one and only Judy Floreal. Welcome back.
Whoop, whoop. Thank you for having me.
Woo! Yes. So we just had an amazing podcast just released. A lot of good, favorable feedback and a lot of support, a lot of love. What was it like for you, Judy, after sharing your story and, hearing the support and love and feedback from people?
Sharing the story was the easy part. Do you know what I mean? Talking about what I've been through. And so I know it sounds weird to say it was the easy part, but it is because it's my story, so I know it so well. And, it is exciting to share with everybody. And to get such good feedback, it almost makes me feel a little bit nervous for part two because of, raising expectations. But I need to kind of just drop that out of my head and just, continue to share, I suppose, my truth, my message. But it's been so lovely. The feedback's been lovely. So many, I don't want to cry, but so many people have said, such nice things and, saying, how brave I am to share it. And I've always worn my heart on my sleeve, so it doesn't feel unusual to share it, but I suppose to share it on a bigger scale, I suppose that's the kind of bigger thing. But it's lovely, and it's lovely that, that your life can have an impact on other people. For so many times I kind of just thought I was just me and I was just surviving, and now that I'm getting that chance to really grow and thrive, it's lovely that other people are recognising it too. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, for you to be vulnerable, to have that courage and bravery to share, some of the deeper, almost unflattering parts. And that's the thing, life is messy. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people, as you had touched in a prior podcast about perfectionism, we always just want to show the best parts of ourselves, whether it's on social media, and to give this curated lie of your life. But if people are really honest, it's not an easy path. It's not an easy life in terms of if you really want to learn, if you want to grow, if you want to mature. It's not going to be that Pollyanna-ish. In the last podcast, as I was editing and taking notes, I even had my own sort of analysis of, one could say a performance. You were expressing yourself, sharing your story. I was being the host, trying to pull out, at least by my presence, maybe by questions as well, sort of more truth and reality that could help people. But there's also this sort of voice in the back of our head, how can one improve? In case of this show, I felt the lighting was as good on your end, right? So I wanted to instead of just beating myself up why didn't I do that or whatever, it's just hey, just look at it as an iteration process, and life is the same thing, right? So we change the set a little bit. It makes it easier for your neck to be able to look at each other, and hopefully it looks nice for the audience who are watching the video podcast. But the point is that we have to understand, in order to truly live, it's not always going to be, puppy dogs and rainbows and, roses. And as much as there was the kind of darker side of your life, and the fact that, one question I got from somebody was is Judy a Christian? And it's the way you were talking may have come across that way, right? Because you're talking about miracles, you were talking about the Bible, and I'll ask you that question directly. For me, because of the life that I've lived, and I spent time in prayer and meditation, I've delved into multiple kinds of religious denominations. And for me, when I listen to myself talk and I say like miracles and signs, and I could imagine somebody listening to the other side going like, what is this guy, a kook? Like, is he a religious freak, right? I may be like embellishing that, but I want people to understand that we're not lacking like discernment or critical thinking or the ability to like ask questions. Like, we just use this kind of language because literally like life seems like one big ass miracle, and people aren't really acknowledging that. And for me, it just comes down to like, could we say God, we say universe, but these are just labels. We're trying to describe something that's like so profound and so unbelievably incredible. I mean, incredible. It's not credible. It's like, it's beyond credible, right? And science is great. And, we can get into like controversies around what science was supposed to be, which is like question everything, critically think, test, experiment, find out if there's these consistent patterns that we want to like call like scientific laws. But we have to understand we're all human too, whether it's religious people in a church, as you were saying, that took advantage of, naive folks, or people that have been traumatized in the past. They're looking for some sort of connection, right? And so they would take advantage, use their power and authority, follow these rules, be part of our community and tribe, and you'll have a good life. If you don't follow them, then you're out, you're on your own, you're excommunicated, you're booted out, and good luck, right? But I mean, that's just kind of weird to me, right? And then on the scientific level, if you can't question the narration around, the pandemic brought that up. And I'm not going to go into it because it's very controversial. But let's just say, like, if we were all honest ourselves, we couldn't completely believe our leaders, our media, even the scientists. Supposed to be the top scientists, and you find out that there may be some cover-up, there may be some, lies that have been said to, like, protect people, or to, maybe, like, make sure that there was enough masks to go around for the care workers, so to speak. So my point is that we don't lack discernment, right? I wanted to emphasize that because, life is beautiful and it's amazing when you start to see things click into place and you start to live. Like I say, you live long enough, you develop a little bit of wisdom, you see patterns. We're not always right, but that's the other thing, like to be able to admit that you're wrong, to admit that you fucked up, right? And I think that's, for me, growing up without a father, right? And then actually meeting him down the line. And of course, he has his version of reality. My mom has her version of reality. And maybe there's something that's like kind of in between. But I kind of value more of my mom's reality than my father. And the reason, and you could probably attest to that too, is that like our fathers have not admitted to what they had done, right? And in the end, I'm glad that I didn't grow up in that environment, right? And, it's just sad to see that we can fall to sort of charismatic, narcissistic egomaniacs, right? I think it's human to admit that you erred, that you messed up, right? To do your best, and that's the point. Like I was saying earlier, it's just messy, and I just want people to understand that, like, that don't stop yourself from going out there and living your best life and doing what you want to do, right? And so I'm just going to shut up and I'll let Judy talk because I don't want to steal all the thunder here. I even forgot the question I was going to ask, but you carry on here.
Yeah, I was thinking, what was the question? Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I was never good at lying, which is a bit of a funny phrase, but I just was never a good liar. And I mean, I just can't really do it. It just eats me up inside. Like the guilt of it just eats away at me, just corrodes at me. And even sometimes when it's not a lie, but it's, and sometimes, you need to protect people. So you kind of give them not a version of the truth, but a limited amount of information. That still would have eaten up in it at me. So for me to there's never been like big things, but those small things definitely would have eaten away at me, and I've struggled with that. And I struggled because I was so much like my heart on my sleeve type person that I kind of just wanted everybody to know everything. And that's one thing that I've had to learn, is that actually not everybody deserves to know everything about you, and not everybody has the right to have that. And I actually used to, kind of almost like vomit everything up about me and my life to people, because actually I was just looking for self-assurance. I was looking for their respect. I was looking for their support. I was wanting them to know my worst to make sure that they still liked me, rather than, oh, we're your friend, and then suddenly they find out something about my past, or they find something about what I've been through, or they find out that, I'd been in care, or whatever it was, whatever things that I felt like it was like a cloud in my life, or a dark mark, or a scar in my life, or something that I wasn't proud of. I was always frightened that people, once they got to know that, they would reject me. So I would put it all out there first. So if they're going to reject me, they're just going to do it and get it over and done with and have it done straight away. So I don't think that that's necessarily what most people do, but that's kind of how I lived my life. So I've had to learn, and I had to learn really late in life, late in my 30s, to understand boundaries and understand, to respect myself and to respect my information, and that I don't have to share everything. And also, I don't even have to share everything with you. And I love you and I want to share everything with you, but I don't actually have to share absolutely everything. Just thoughts, or, sometimes you just want to have something just in your heart and it's just for you. And that's okay. That's like really okay. But that's been such a learning process for me to have. And my brain's just kind of gone on a little tangent there, I get that. But what I was kind of getting to is, I don't know how you could do something really bad and not hold your hands up and say, I messed up. I'm really sorry. And I think most people are forgiving. I think most people will listen and will, turn the other cheek, or if they don't turn the other cheek, they'll be like, yeah, okay, thanks for telling me, but I don't want to have a relationship anymore. But at least you've tried. And like, there's recently something that I had to ask for forgiveness for, a family issue. I'd been there for a long time. It had really kind of eaten away at me, actually, because I'd kind of bottled everything up and then it all blurted out. And when you blurt out the truth, also you blurt out a whole load of emotions and a whole load of anger and stuff as well. So it came out wrong, basically. So my truth came out wrong because I'd bottled it up for too long. So then I had to apologise for how it came out, and being more kind of forceful and aggressive than I meant to be. And it was good. And even though that person might not really fully accept that apology or give me forgiveness, I know that my conscience is cleared. And at the end of the day, I've got to live with me. I'm not living anybody else's life. I can't live anybody else's life. I wanted to live other people's lives for a long time. But, I've had to come to terms with what I've been through, what I've been dealt, take responsibility for me, for the shortcomings that I've had. There's definitely issues that I've struggled with for lots of different things, but take responsibility for those, because yes, it might have been other people's fault of what I went through. Some of the fault was mine because I let it happen. You know, as an adult, I let that happen. A child is different, but as an adult, I let people take advantage of me. I put myself in vulnerable situations.
But also you didn't have healthy boundaries.
Yeah, and I've had to work that out. But, you know, that's one of the biggest steps, was to take responsibility for myself and take responsibility for my life and take responsibility for the things that I didn't like about myself. And learn to go, right, is that something that I can change? Are there things in my life that I can improve on? How can I better myself? Because at the end of the day, to be able to look in the mirror and be happy with what you see coming back is massive. Like, even the thought of that makes me feel like emotional, because I know how long it took. I know how long that took. Not to despise what I saw in the mirror. Not to think that everybody thought I was stupid or ugly, or I even thought for years I was fat. You mean, just complete lies. It wasn't truth, but it was easier to believe a lie than it was to believe something nice about myself. Or somebody gave me a compliment. For years I used to just bat it away, and then I learned that I had to actually, you know, accept it, because that was actually rude. It's like they're trying to give you a gift. So I was like, okay. So then I learned to kind of just go, okay, thank you, really uncomfortable, kind of thing. And then bit by bit by bit, it's like, oh, thank you, I really appreciate that. And actually genuinely receive it as a gift and know that they wanted to give it to me because it was their truth. It's them sharing their truth. That's a gift to them. Like, I would feel awful if I give somebody a gift and they rejected it, and it was learning, oh, it's the same thing, Judith.
Yeah, just to, you know, and I acknowledge that that's very true, of course. And with anything, it's not like 100%, right? Because someone could give you a gift and you already had that thing, and they'll be offended by it, and you're going like, hey, it's okay. Like, I don't have to accept this gift. I know where you're coming from. I know it's coming from your heart, right? And that's being true to me, right? And so I've lost, or even created, like, situations where, like, I put up a boundary, right? And it is a discerning thing. Like, yeah, the easy thing is say, oh, thank you very much, take it, and then, like, give it to someone else. But for me, I was always seeking approval. I was always, like, trying to, like, be the nice guy. And I was like, you know, I got to a point, because as you get to know yourself and you mature, you also develop a spine, and you develop the ability to discern, like, why is this person giving me a gift? Because maybe you're starting to sense something, that there's, like, a motive, there's, like, right? And you're like, no, I don't want your gift, thank you very much, you know, it's very kind of you. And they have to be able to take rejection, right? And so that's what I was saying that earlier, because I remember the question, and it's like, are you a Christian, right? Oh, yeah. Because I would have been told that when I, you know, even of all places, when I went to China, because I was, like, dating a girl there, right? And I remember when we were talking long distance on the phone, she would say things like, oh, do you like the Killers? And I was like, the Killers? And you know, because there was even a language barrier somewhere. She spoke really good English, self-taught, like, through watching movies in Hollywood, right? But she was like, do you like the Killers? And I was like, what is she talking about, right? And I had already met her in China, and we, you know, were dating there, and I came back to States, and so I was going to go back to visit her, and I was like, that is just so weird. What she mean? You know, I was in touch of what the, I guess, the pop, like, music of the time, right? And that's what she meant. Like, she was into the Killers, which was a band, right? So we were dating. I went back to China to see her, and everything was great. And at one point, she turned to me and says, are you a Christian? And I was like, kind of taken back. I was like, what? And I was like, no, I'm not a Christian. Like, you know, I think Jesus is pretty cool. But you could see, like, she was kind of, like, weirded out, because, maybe I was like too positive, or maybe I was, you know, I don't know, like maybe I exude like Christian virtues and Christian like even language, and she just mistaken. So like it was just weird after, like a relationship didn't even work after that, right? But you know, it was really bizarre, like that she would make that assumption. And not that, like, for me, that's where labels go crazy and haywire, right? Because it's like, hey, I'm totally tolerant to what people want to believe and how they are, but in the end, we're all human. It doesn't matter like what color our skin is, which is just how much melanin one has in their epidermis or dermal layers, right? And then you got like literally people programmed to be like, oh, what team are you on? Like, what politics do you play? Being in Northern Ireland, you start to see all that stuff play out. So, you know, I think you would say the same thing, like, and I'll put it out there, like, are you Christian, Judy?
It's funny because I don't 1,000% know how to answer that, because I know, you know, some friends, church members that, you know, that I've been very close with over the years say that I'm not a Christian anymore because I'm not going to church, and that I'm not worshipping every Sunday, and, you know, reading my Bible regularly. So I know some people would say that I'm not. For me, I think it's bigger. I mean, that's one thing that I felt very much from when I was in the kind of cult type church. You know, they were very exclusive, as in nobody else has got it, we're the only ones that have got it right. So exclusive isn't the right word, but it was so much like, well, if you don't believe what we believe, then you've not got it right, and you know, you're wrong. You're not going to heaven or whatever. And I had another experience actually here in a church locally at home, and again, it was very much like, you know, there is things about, you know, being Catholic. You know, members there quite clearly being quite vocal about, you know, basically Catholics haven't got it right, and you know, you're Protestant or Presbyterian or whatever is the only way, and you know, and then also there was homophobic stuff as well, and I was like, I can't be with an organisation that will deny other people entry because of their faith or their religion or their colour or their background or anything.
Yeah, sexual orientation.
Exactly.
Whatever, yeah.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? There was a beautiful church that I was part of in England. Eastleigh Baptist Church, put a shout out there because there's so many people there that I just love, and I know that they love me. You mean, and there's so many ones there that I'm still in contact with and still love me dearly. And it doesn't matter where I am, you know, spiritually, emotionally, physically, they're still there. They still love me. The door is always open. And to me, that's what it's about. That's what God is about. That is what having that faith is about, is that it doesn't matter. Those, you know, the differences, you know, from what I saw from reading the Bible, you know, and believing in God and believing in Jesus from as young as I can ever remember. That's what my mum brought me up as, what my granny brought me up as. You know, I mean, we were at church all the time. I mean, and for me, I understood really early on that God wasn't the church and the church wasn't God, because a lot of the people that failed me were in the church, were leaders in the church. The ones that abused or took advantage of me were leaders in the church. That was just the fact. So I learned very early on that there were two separate identities. And to me, God is always God. He's always been there. And also very early on, which I think was a real lifeline for me, is that I just had a knowledge that he was always there. No matter what happened, no matter how dark things got, or no matter what I did or what happened to me, that God was always there. And that's massive, because there were so many times where it was very dark, very lonely, depressing, anxious. Just so much going on, so much confusion, so much fear. But I always had that solid in there belief, and I don't feel as if I was so faithful, or I was the best Christian or whatever, that I really believed and prayed for this. It just felt like it was a knowledge imparted into me. It was just like somebody had taught me how to learn my alphabet.
And that's the thing, like, where, and forgive me for interrupting, but we've had discussions about this, and one may even say disagreements. It could be a difference in language, which I think happens with, even different culture. We speak English, but you speak more Northern Ireland English, or, you lived in England, maybe English, British English. I'm American English, California, maybe even surfer dude English, right? So, but you say he, right? Like for me,
Yeah.
I went to Catholic school. I wasn't baptized. I felt like an outcast. My sister and I were begging our mom, like, can we be baptized so we can be like our friends? We always felt different, right? Because even though we went to church services, we couldn't like go up and take the bread or the body of Christ. And that was weird. Like we had to sit in the back, like we were in a segregated like bus or something. And so I just remember my mom distinctly saying, like, God loves you no matter what. Like you don't need to go to church in order to, be loved by God, right? Like God is everywhere. And, I think even my mom's even amazed that she said those things, She means it, but it was just amazing wisdom that came out of her, right? So you said that, people imparted this on you, right? Like learning the alphabet. And to me, that's like a program, like the experience of God or the universe, especially when I used the same Christian lingo, like the dark night of the soul, when I had nothing and I called out to God because I questioned the word God. I had debates with people about God, and I was like, how do you know it's God? How do you know it's a he, right? Is it some bearded white dude in the clouds? Like, what's up with, what's the devil? Like, am I going to hell? Because, it's like all these questions. And at my lowest point, when I had this sort of mental breakdown, I called out to God, please help me. And I cried myself to sleep. And I remember waking up in the morning, like the veil had been removed from my eyes. And I saw the world like I was a child again. Everything was new and bright and clear and light. And I had no context for it. Although, like, I went to religious, like, learned about the Catholic version of religion, right? Or I grew up with my family, and everybody was a different, now it's confusing, different denomination, right? We had like Buddhas in the house. We had people that were Mormons. Some people were Methodists. Some people were, Catholic, right? And so, but then I would hear about like Jewish people and like Muslim people, and I was like, well, who's the authority of this thing that we called life? Right? And these like sort of prophets that come. And so, to say the least, to have the experience of God, which for me, like, even though I had that like experience, I'm very careful because there's still the skeptic in me, there's still the scientist in me. I wouldn't say that, like, if you were gonna label it, like, I couldn't say that I'm an atheist, because, like, how does all this organized intelligence, organized chaos happen, right? How did our cells do what they do without, like, us being the orchestrator of that, right? So it's like all these things in life are just kind of like happening, and like no one can explain that mystery. And I think the truth is, if you can say, like, I don't know, that I know that I don't know, like, I think that's like the closest to truth that anybody's ever gotten. And it's just interesting, different perspective that people have based on like their like cultural upbringings and experiences, and strip all that away. Like, to me, we're human beings. It doesn't matter like all these different labels. The labels are useful for communication, but again, like you said, like God isn't the church and the church isn't God, right? And we can't put all our power into these like authority figures or leaders. And that's, I think, where we're moving towards, even though we may use a different word for things, but we're moving toward, like, I hope, more maturity, a path of individuation, because you talked about, like, it's okay that you don't share everything with me, and vice versa, right? Like, you know, people in the church especially say, oh, I have to tell the truth all the time. No, you don't. No, you don't, because if you're trying to save someone's life, like in, you know, the Nazi takeover of the Jews, and like you have like German people or Polish people, Austrian people hiding Jews from the Germans, and the Germans knock on the door and say, like, do you know where this person is? You know, Jewish background. You're not gonna say, yeah, they're in my house, I'm hiding them in the basement. You're gonna say, no, sir, I don't know. You know, you're just gonna say, no, I don't know. Right? So, and I think that's where like the church can go wrong. I think any kind of like organization or team or tribe or political affiliation, when people can't even like question or have a public square debate or a conversation and just be critical and not always agree with each other, that's dangerous, right? And so just, I think because of your upbringing, you didn't have that sort of developmental process of like discernment. It was just all church, like Sundays, go all day long Sunday, and then like working on the farm, and if you didn't do what was told, you got like smacked, right? So I'll shut up again.
I was thinking, it's like everything, it's all a journey. There's never a day that you've made it. You mean, or if there's something that you've been trying to achieve, there's still room for improvement. And I feel like having faith or belief for me is a journey, you know, and it has changed. But fundamentally, I still have a belief that there is something, someone much greater than me that has helped me, protected me, kept me safe, guided me so many times that I could never deny it. I would never want to deny it either. You know, and I've had the conversations with my sisters as well, and you know, we've all seen that we've been loved and looked after and cared for. You mean, we had the conversation one time, and I think we stopped at 13 times that we should have died and we didn't. And you know, it's not obviously the nicest conversation to have, but it was interesting. It was like, there's, you know, if it's not your time to go, it's not your time to go. But also the times when it, you know, it looked as if it was, you know, time's up, just how literally it's a miracle, just how things have, you know, changed, lifted, something's just shifted. I mean, it's unexplainable. Like, there's been times that I've had a knowledge, particularly in a big car accident, where I had a lorry like drive into me because it didn't see me. For my American listeners, a truck, a big rig, a big truck, big articulated truck heading to Southampton docks. Didn't see me, in the dark, in the rain. It's a stretch on the motorway on the M3 that's actually really not well lit. But I had a knowledge just before he put the indicator on that he couldn't see me and I needed to get out of the way. And that wasn't just logical. You know, I'm busy and it's rush hour traffic and it's raining and it's dark and da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, I had a friend, they were chatting to me in the passenger seat. You know, there's lots of things going on, but I just knew, no question, without a doubt, I needed to move. And thank goodness I put my foot down and I kind of closed up the gap between me and the car in front. So the truck, instead of hitting me, literally at my window, hit the petrol cap. And then I was obviously braced for it because I literally knew it was going to happen. And I'm like holding that steering wheel with all of my might. So instead of the car just like shoving right over across the hard shoulder, then into the barrier, and then it was literally just rock because it was cut out through the mountain. There wasn't anywhere else to go. I mean, instead of slamming against that, we kind of like wobbled all over the place, and then eventually came to a standstill. Like there's no question that the universe, creator, God, whoever is there, told me. Gave me that knowledge beforehand. And there's been other times where that's happened and it's like totally undeniable.
So you're saying that you feel like there's some sort of presence?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe guardian angels. I mean, we talk about this all the time. I use the same language. I feel like there seems to be more than likely, because of all the experiences we had where we almost died multiple times, right? And we're still here. But are we just saying that because it makes us feel better? I mean, some people call it an intuition or a sixth sense. But in the end, we're pretty much talking about the same thing. I believe that we just come from different lenses, or imagine like multiple lenses all aligned. One would be like, the Christian lens, and then you had your little like scientific lens in between, and your cultural lens, and your language lens, like all of these different lenses. Imagine, and that's like is how you see the world, right? And you can like switch these lenses in and out. If we can like walk with a mile or so in someone else's shoes, like. I love these metaphors and analogies, right? Because like, where do they come from? They come from like people's experiences, and then you could just say that one thing and everybody would get it, right? So
I think life is beautiful. It is beautiful. And even on the hardest days, even in the trickiest times, if you're able to just pause yourself. We talked about double A mat. There's lots of different tips that he's given me, and one of the ones was eat with calm. And he always goes calm. And it was like so true, because I literally would like guzzle my food down as if I'm like a dog and somebody's like going to steal it from me. I've always eaten like that. But it's just that moment where you just pause. And like we always do it, we say a prayer every time before we have whatever we're going to eat at the dinner table.
Yeah, if you're a fly on the wall, you guys would think we're a bunch of goofy hippies, Care Bears and rainbows, and the silliest prayers. But the point is that we're having like gratitude, Thanksgiving, and reverence for maybe an animal that gave its life so that we can eat and survive and thrive, and but also to like respect your body and food by not like chowing down like you are like an animal, right? So
but exactly, so true. It's like every moment that we have, whenever you can take literally just a moment to appreciate whatever is around you, whatever's going on. So with food now, it is that to savor it, to really enjoy it. I digest it better, so much better. I feel so much better.
Well, on a sort of, I guess, nutritional scientific level, your saliva is your first stomach, really, right? That has all the enzymes and all the, I guess, the catalytic converters. I don't know what to say, but essentially that's where digestion begins, and you're bypassing that, right? And you had talked about having issues with going to the bathroom like in the past, and I've had issues just because I was an athlete and I just wanted to throw down food, right? I love food. I grew up around lots of cultures in San Francisco. So I really enjoy food, and I just want to throw it down, especially if I'm hungry. But that comes down to like awareness and mindfulness. And then you realize, like, as you learn more about like how the human body works and about fight or flight and stress hormones, like, you don't want to eat your food and like fight or flight, like, you know, like you got to guzzle it down and then go running or fighting. That's just ridiculous, right? So again, that's just maturity. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's been our health journey. As we, you know, overall people look at us, say like, oh, they're healthy, but that's just not enough for us. Like, we have high standards. We want to live our best life. We want to, and not to be like dogmatic, or that we can't even enjoy like a beer or a shot of whiskey, which we do, being in Ireland, being in pubs, you know. But, you know, back to what you're saying is eating with calm, right? And slowing things down.
I think it's, for me, that is just a reminder of taking a moment and being grateful. That's what the being calm for me is. Yes, there's lots of other benefits to it, but it is that grateful that I'm with you, grateful that we have a table to sit and enjoy and eat our food together, and to have that time together, like so many people don't, you know, working, you know, separate shifts, or, you know, kind of passing ships in the night, all that kind of stuff. To actually have that quality time together to chat and to eat and to enjoy that time. And it's just taking those moments, because before I didn't, you know, I was always rushing to go everywhere. I couldn't just give myself an extra 5 minutes to leave the house, so I didn't actually have to physically run to the train or speed in the car, or like run somewhere else when I was supposed to be like walking there. It's giving myself
program rat race.
Yeah, but it, like, there was more to it as well, because a lot of it for me, and I still haven't managed it. Timekeeping has never been a strong point. Friends and family will testify.
I would testify to that as well.
But I'm getting better.
Yes, that's the point of the earlier, you know, when we were starting out, about like iterating, making improvements, small changes every day over time is exponential. Mm-hmm. And that's been like our process, right? Like with this podcast, I'm trying to improve every time. Every day I'm exercising. If I do a move a certain way, I'm trying to like get more skillful and more graceful, right? And so that's the same like with timekeeping, right? Or cleaning your room or vacuuming the house, like just the little things that you can do to improve the quality of your life. And things take effort. Like I talk about flow and in this sense of effortlessness, but to get there, it takes effort, and it takes repeated mistakes, errors, and then adjusting, adapting, and then trying again. Mm.
And for me, most of the things that I've made and the changes that I've made in my life is because I valued myself. I started to learn to love myself. I started to learn to value myself. I started to learn that my life wasn't to serve everybody and everything around me, because I looked after everything and everyone bar me. I was always the last on the list, which was why I didn't sleep enough. I didn't give myself enough time to get ready. I didn't give myself enough time, you know, if something went wrong on the road and the traffic and the journey. I never, you know, you always want to turn up like half an hour, 15 minutes early, which to me was like absurd. But I get it now, because it's so nice to arrive somewhere and you've got time to just have a minute, go for a little walk, check your phone, brush your hair, you know, do whatever you want to do, but just to have that time, so you're not just coming in a big whirlwind. You're there and you're present and you're ready to engage with whoever you're, you know, visiting or whatever you're doing. And I think that's the thing. It's like being present is a gift for others, but it's a gift for me, because I wasn't present for myself. I think that actually was huge as well. It's all tied into that self-love. And I know self-love sounds very airy-fairy kind of thing, but it's the real practical stuff. Like, I take more time to brush my teeth because, geez, I used to brush my teeth as if they were stainless steel.
I know.
You know,
and you're bleeding every
bleeding
time.
gums.
I know.
Because I just brushed them so fast.
Yeah.
There was no care. And I'm like,
I wouldn't bleed my gums, but I would pretty much take off the enamel on my teeth, right? Just because I was like so tense. And that's the thing, like, just awareness, being more conscious and mindful of things. You start to like pick up, oh, I'm like an ogre in some aspects of my life, right? Whether like you're walking in general and you're walking so heavy footed, right? Or you're just jamming the toothbrush in your mouth, right? It's just, or the way we close doors or like cabinet doors. It's just mind-blowing when I actually observe people, including myself. And that's what you're saying about like self-love. It's just being with yourself. You talked about the flotation tank, sensory deprivation, to be able to just be floating in salt water on your back in complete darkness with no input coming out from your external environment, and you're just left with yourself. And when you sit there with yourself, things come up, things you may not like about yourself or things that you've done in the past. Like, we all, if we're healthy human beings, have a conscience. And we don't need religion. I mean, if that's your thing, go for it, right? Because we're talking about the church, talking about organizations and tribes, and those things are great. Like, I'm all about those things, as long as they're not abusing people and taking advantage of them. And if you love rooting for your team, or your church is actually a good church and they were as best they could vet out these people that end up, you know, preying on naive and very susceptible people that have been traumatized before, because that was your story that you told, and I sat there and go, holy crap, I knew of it, but it really emphasized that there are people that literally sneak into these organizations and prey on little kids and prey on even adults that have not healed from the traumas and abuse of the past. And so you're talking about truth and telling the truth, and these people take what you say and use it against you, right? Yeah. And this thing called gaslighting, right? People are gaslighting each other all the time, like partly because our memory is kind of shitty, you know, it's not the best way. I mean, they know that in a court of law, right? Everybody's going to have their version of an incident or an event based on the lenses. So it's not the most accurate way. So that in itself is almost like a faulty human program, right? And then you tie that in with people taking advantage of people because certain people are just so nice and so kind and never developed like healthy boundaries or the ability to discern whether someone is like fucking with you or not, you know? And so, like, I joke all the time because I love your foster mother, right? She's my foster mother-in-law in love. But in the beginning, she was looking at me hardcore, right? She would turn her head with, like, almost one eye, and she'd discern. She'd look at me, and I'd look at her back the same way, and I go, I see that you're looking at me. Looking at you, I'm looking at you, you looking at me. You know, it was funny. It was like a Western standoff, but I love that about her because she knows what you've been through, right? So she was testing me, and I was still sweating buckets, right? But I could tell her, like, I'm sweating buckets because I know what, for me, it was just like my past trauma, right? Just being put on the hot seat. So it wasn't indicative of what was happening in the moment because I was able to address it. I was vulnerable. I'm like, I'm sweating buckets right now. I know you're looking at me. You know I'm looking at you, right? And she just started giggling and laughing, right? And I think that's when we were able to connect. And I'm so grateful for your foster parents for being there for you and your sisters, right? And they know what the church organizations have done. In the good sense, it's giving people structure, it gives people faith, it gives people a sense of being part of something greater. It helps with being in service of those in need, right? It's an amazing place to be part of a community of people that work together to better society. There's always a load of amazing things about these kind of organizations, but they've also seen leaders and subjugates or subordinates of leaders abuse people, including you and people that they know. They just said, we've had it. We're done with church, and so.
But I know as well, being, what they're saying, being done with church, doesn't mean you're done with God. Doesn't mean you don't have a faith. Doesn't mean that, you've kind of closed that spiritual part of yourself. You can't. To me, everything in life is spiritual. And I know that sounds very big and grand, but literally everything is. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Look how big the universe is.
It's just incredible. There's just... we still have no idea really how the body works, how it's all interconnected, how every little system in the body is webbed together. It's like the most beautiful, amazing ecosystem. We can heal from so many things. Jeez, I've tested that. I put it through several tests about chopping parts of my body off and hurting this and damaging that, whatever. It's incredible how it heals and how it comes back and how it can actually come back and be even stronger than it was before. It's just incredible.
And they're still learning about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's to be honest about saying this is the best that we have, and we don't know all of it. It's still a mystery. Neuroscience is further than it's ever been, and they still go, we don't know how the brain works. We're getting a better sense with the help of artificial intelligence and certain, measurements of instruments. But outside of that, the true scientists will say, I don't know. And a religious leader would say, it is a grand mystery, and it's beautiful, and it's all God, and there's certain people that maybe exemplified certain virtues that were just extraordinary. But to claim, and not just me, to claim one person is the perfect being that was favored by this male God, right? And all of us are sinners, it's just whoa, that's intense, right? But I'm okay if people believe with that. I'm all about freedom, that's the point. Come to a place where if that works for you, that's great. Can we have a conversation about it? Even better, I've had late night debates with people, and it was great. We still remain friends. Unfortunately, the pandemic, I've lost friends, and that's because they didn't want to talk about it. Not that I don't want to be friends. They don't want to be friends with me, right? Or we put our boundaries up. There was a point where we were hey, you guys are crossing the line. No, right? This is starting to look like totalitarian 1984 George Orwell stuff, right? Brave New World. What is going on? Why is everybody just going along with things? Understandable when it first started. No one knew. But as more data came and as time went on, we started looking around going like, okay, and then, people are going to get it, right? But who was talking about exercise? Who was talking about getting good rest and eating better and, all the good things that keep your immune system strong, right? I went on a tangent there, but your point is?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just we should be able to communicate. We should be able to have the hard talks and to be like, it's okay to disagree. That's not going to stop us from being kind to each other, respectful.
Yes.
If you don't want to be my friend, you have the freedom to do that. If you don't like something and you say it, you have the freedom to do that. I have the same freedom to say something opposing or contrarian, not because I'm trying to be difficult or I'm trying to like be a jerk about just almost like a childish way of like, going against what someone else believes. It's just like, hey, let's just suss this out. Let's look at what this experience of life is. And let me see because I learned so many things from so many people that I was like, oh, I never thought of that. Because in a sense, when I was younger, I thought I was like more of a liberal type person. As I get older, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming more conservative. But I look at like the spectrum, like I'm actually like more middle, right? But then someone might say I'm like far right or far left. But I think we all just, it's not so simple. It's so complex, each person. And like, do yourself a good service and actually get to know someone, right? Even if you disagree on things. But in the end, there's respect. And that's what I hope to come across even with this podcast, is that people start to get along in a sense of respect. If you have something that you want to talk about, go address it. It's good for your health to be able to get it out. Like you said sorry to someone because of the way that you got mad at them for doing something, right? And so now you can look at yourself in the mirror, you can sleep at night, you're at peace, they forgave you. And even if they didn't forgive you, there's so many times in my life where I fucked up and I said sorry and they were like, fuck off, right? And I said, I respect that. I'm sorry. And I left them alone. I went on with my life. I let them go on with their life. And I could look at myself and say, you did it, Tony. You said sorry. You did your best. You can't change people. And I learned to accept that reality, right? And that's part of maturing. You don't want to be some crazy stalker. Someone doesn't want to like be in a relationship with you. You have to respect that, right? Like you might like try 1 or 2 times, but if they say like no more, like walk away, right?
It's hard. That's happened to me too. It's hard.
Yeah. And that's the thing you said about the cult stuff, right?
Yeah, and that was like, that almost broke me. It broke my heart because like I knew I needed to leave. I knew that there was so much there that was wrong. But I didn't know how, but also B, I was heartbroken. I mean, I was, leading the kids, Sunday school leader. And I loved those kids. And those kids are adults now, and there's 1 or 2 that are actually have got in touch, which is amazing. But geez, I love those wee kids. Do you know what I mean? And they really looked up to you, as that kind of really, and I'm saying kids, they were like 11, 12, 13. They're such like important years in your life of where you're really forming how you're feeling and how you're thinking, and you're all that change with your hormones and school, and there's so much going on. And I really, it felt hard, like when I actually got thrown out, it was so sad because I could never tell them what I really thought. You know what I mean? Because, you know, back in the days, I actually didn't have a mobile phone. You mean, or I would definitely, they wouldn't have had mobile phones. You mean, and then the parents probably didn't want to even have any contact with me and that kind of thing. So I just had to just leave, and I felt heartbroken to just leave and not be able to say, you know, explain what was going on. But then also I couldn't explain what had going on because they were so in part of that group of, you know, it was the leadership within that group that I was saying, this is what they've done to me. You mean, I didn't really feel as if I could go in and tell them and destroy their whole idea of the organization that they were, you know, literally had, you know, circled their lives around.
Yeah, well, you said that the head person, you know, took you in for 3 days and spent those time convincing you that you were the person that was wrong, right? And it was just, this is what goes on in these like dark aspects of organizations. They're trying to save face. It's a PR issue. They're trying to like keep the machine going, right? Instead of actually saying like, we need to address it. Because at my Catholic school, our Monsignor, the head guy, was molesting a bunch of altar boys, right? I remember this guy shaking his hand, looking up to him. He was like super cool. He was driving a Chevy IROC convertible, white leather, white paint. But he was banging like the moms of these like altar boys. And, you know, it was like, but when that came out, it was the Catholic Church was covering. They just moved them to another diocese.
Yeah.
And then finally it came out, you know, and so like, I don't know like how many of my own friends who were altar boys, like, did it happen to them, right? But it was years later, and then this Monsignor finally got convicted. But I don't think he went to like proper prison. He went to like some kind of like, you know, isolated place, you know, where he had to serve time. But, you know, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? Where it's disgusting, right? And so you're impressionable. You obviously have a connection with the kids, but like they basically manipulated you, right? To the point where you're actually lucky that they kicked you out.
Oh, it was?
Right, because you would have stayed. And not how many victims stay in a relationship or an organization even though they're abused.
Yeah.
Right? Because of what? Like, you know, they justify it, they rationalize it, right?
Well, I think a lot of it's the fear of the unknown as well. I mean, because when I was there, everything was so controlled. And, you know, when I was in that bubble and I was happy in that bubble, I was blissfully happy. Because I didn't make any decisions for myself. They literally made all my decisions, all my choices. What I ate, what I listened to, what I, you know, spent my time on, what I believed. Just everything was covered.
What does that sound like?
A cult.
I know, but...
Mind control.
Yeah, culture. What's going on right now in the Western world?
But also that kind of brainwashing as well. So when I see that happening now in different ways, through different mediums, different... quite a lot in the media and stuff as well, that kind of brainwashing where they're kind of saying, well, this might happen and this is the response and this is what, you know, this is what this means, and they're kind of preempting lots of stuff, and then that thing happens and then people go, oh yes, you told us that might happen, oh yes, you've told us how to react, okay, we will react in that way. And I've seen that happen and happen and happen again the last few years, and that's scary because I was literally there.
Right.
I was literally there, and I thought it was right, and I thought everything was good until it wasn't. And then it was literally like one switch, and it was like suddenly horror. I went in from this, everything's great and lovely and happy, to horrendous. And then it was like I was still in my world, and I still had to function in this world, but I wasn't me anymore. I literally like was this kind of like shadow type person because I couldn't be who I was within it because I didn't fit. But then I didn't fit anywhere else because I'd made myself so separate within that environment. I didn't fit anywhere else. And to leave was scary. To leave was unknown. To leave or be thrown out, I knew I was going to get cut off. I have family there. I've still family there. You mean it wasn't just friends? It was actual like blood family as well as them feeling like my family. That organisation felt like my family, you know, and I so longed to be fully accepted, and I so longed to be fully loved for who I was, and it's just that love, that belonging, that acceptance. It's kind of what I'd always dreamed of, and I thought I'd made it, and then suddenly it all came crashing down. And even though it was horrendous, I'm grateful that it did. I'd still be there. They had me lined up to marry a guy, and they were dropping hints left, right and centre. The leadership were dropping major hints to marry this guy. And I remember him and I having a little heart-to-heart going, yeah, I really like you, and you know, you're great, but I don't like you in that way. And he's like, neither do I. We were so relieved because we were being forced together. And there was zero attraction. There was zero connection from that point of view. That's scary.
Bizarre.
It is, but it's scary, and it happens. And you just think, geez, it doesn't just happen in arranged marriages in different religions or different places in the world. It's happening in England.
Yeah.
How many other places is it actually happening where people are kind of railroading people, going maybe with best intentions, but they're railroading people into something of a life of unhappiness. And I think, you know, what we were saying earlier, for me, when I was able to boil it all down and go, it's not good, and I need to get out, and I need to basically figure out a new framework, because my foundations now were gone, and that's scary, because you have to start from the start, and you really don't know what you're doing, and you don't have a support network around you, and because I'd kind of cut off contact with my natural family, my foster family, school friends, I didn't really have much contact with a lot of them anymore, and it was my fault. Because I'd been like, oh, you're not really in this group now, so I'm kind of rejecting you, and I'm not listening to what you're saying, and just literally was so close-minded. Like, there was times when they were arguing with me and trying to get me to see sense, and I don't remember those arguments. I don't remember those discussions at all. It's just like, I was just so like...
Yeah, under a spell, you're hypnotized, right?
Under this kind of like big kind of... it's like a horse with the little
blinders,
on.
yeah.
It was just, I wasn't going to see anything else.
But just like, so the people listening right now or watching, it's like, this is actually happening to us on a daily basis, not just with organizations, just within ourselves. So it's like, we need to like analyze ourselves and be critical of like these archetypes that are running these sort of scenarios in our heads. But like, how many times do we do things and we don't realize that we're doing them? You know, it's one thing that you're so skilled at something that you don't have to think about it anymore, but it's another thing where you are going from one room to grab something, you get to that room and you go, why am I here? Or, you know, it's like there's lapses. And that's scary, right? So that's actually happening, like that happened for you in this organization. At the same time, once you snap out of that spell, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that you go, I got taken as a fool. And then it's embarrassing to go back home and admit that you were taken, even though everybody was telling you, Judy, you're being taken right now, and you didn't want to hear it. You don't even remember hearing them talk to you about that, right? And at the same time, to go back and be vulnerable and like have no choice but to go back because there's nowhere else to go, right? And that's hard. I could see why a lot of people stay in a relationship or an organization, a cult, because they don't want to go back and look like the idiot as well. It's an ego thing as well. So,
and I think when I did get chucked out, I don't even know who I really told. I was super isolated then, and I had to leave where I was living, find a new home, ended up living in a not a good place, literally getting bullied by the other girls in the house and stuff. It was just weird. There was loads of weird things going on at that point and at that time. But I don't think I really opened up to anybody. I kept myself very isolated, really unhealthy, and then, got together with my ex-husband. I didn't really solve any of the issues, and I didn't really... Some of it I did solve, and some of it, I understood it was wrong, and that I was thinking wrong, and that I needed to not live a life of fear and not live a life of rejecting lots of things and lots of people because they didn't fit into one agenda. I had to be broader minded thinking, but I hadn't really fully worked that out. And then along comes, the charming prince. He's like promising all these wonderful things and this wonderful life together, and everything was great. And then, get married, and then a few days later, oh, something's wrong. And then that was, step by step by step. And I was basically in the exact same situation. Vulnerable, haven't worked my stuff out, not enough confidence in myself, thinking that this person knows it all, listening to everything that they're saying. And it's slowly drip by drip by drip. And then suddenly, you come to the end of the relationship and it's disaster. Do you know what I mean? No self-confidence, think I'm fat, because that's what they told me. All of those things just had eroded myself away, and worked every minute of every day in my head and physically to make that person happy and to make that situation work. But again, I was living a lie. I was more aware this time that I was living a lie.
But you're still living the lie.
Yeah, still living the lie. And
just a lesser degree.
Yeah.
I think that's just part of living and processing. We don't get it right the first time, Hopefully it doesn't wipe you out, that you can move on. And, it's it can be very devastating for people. A lot of people do take their lives after being taken as a fool, and they don't know if they have any other options.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of help, but sometimes we just have too much pride to ask for help, and that's it's across the board. I have a hard time asking for help, right? So I can imagine, but generally people, I call them my earth angels, but they kind of can see through you, and they can see that you are crying for help. We were talking about the really extreme examples of mental health, politically incorrect. It's a form of disorder. There's an illness, right? Based on what society agrees is what's healthy, what's normal, and what's outside those ranges, right? And we heard this from a friend that people cry for help in the most weird ways, and most people miss it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, in my case, right, because I've realized that I've fallen into cultish groups and individuals over and over and over again, right? Even this idea of being in bliss, right? I was meditating, I literally got high off my own supply, and that was the fall of my first marriage, right? Because I was the guy that would check out anytime conflict would happen, right? And mainly because I didn't like the anger that was coming out of me, and the sort of instigation and engagement that was coming up with my relationship. And at one point I literally got so mad I punched the door, cracked the door, I punched the fridge, put a dent in it, and I saw our little dog run out and freaked out. And I went to our dog to bring him back, and he ran away from me. And I was like, I do not want to be like this. This is scary, right? Like, that could have taken a turn for like the worse. But what did I do? I went the other way. I started meditating more. Every time like my wife would like poke at me or say something, I would just smile at her like, oh, that's cute. Like, instead of saying like, hey, what's going on? Why are you upset? I would just walk away. I would go in the corner and meditate. I would like take a walk. I literally would just check out. And so she, over time, like didn't feel like I was there anymore, you know? And so life is interesting, and you know, hopefully we can learn, right? Back to the beginning, like sometimes it's messy, right? And sometimes like you're not gonna get that first marriage that lasts forever, or that relationship, or whatever you do. If you start a new business, or you decide to leave to be an entrepreneur, or you decide that you want more security and you want to work for an organization, right? There isn't anything that's like known, right? Like, all of us are gonna die at some point. Like, we don't know when, right? So that's where we're getting at, I believe, is that if we can just value life and the moment, because we know we've almost died multiple times, right? A lot of it was just being naive and stupid, or having the best intentions in my case, right? And then luckily coming out of it going like, holy shit, that was a close call. Or there's other instances like I'm in the flow state, but even after a while I realized I was getting addicted to those, right? And so I was under these spells of something that I like, where it does feel timeless and effortlessness, but again, I'm mistaken it for not doing any effort anymore, right? Not feeling the heat or the stress of learning something new, and feeling like awkward and clunky and frustrated, and why can't I get this answer or solution? And then I always remember certain people, like mentors, that said, I remember in a physics class, our teacher said, if you feel like your brain's going to explode, you're on a verge of a breakthrough, right? He said, walk away from the problem, and sure enough, the solution will appear, whether you're taking a shower, taking a shit, or you're sleeping. It's amazing. The solutions just appear out of nowhere, right? So if we can just feel the burn of learning, because that is the process of learning, and life is one big ass classroom and school, and then not beat ourselves up, right? Like, just be okay, you know, ask for help, be an individual. You can be an individual within a collective group. There's nothing wrong with that. You can be in a collective group and still be an individual, but don't lose yourself, right? Don't lose your intelligence, your creative thinking, your critical thinking, right? Like, if something doesn't feel right and it's peer pressure, walk away. I mean, it's hard. I had to learn that the hard way, but I've literally walked away from friends because I don't like the world that they're in. And nothing against them. They can keep doing that. I'm happy that they have the freedom to do that. But it's okay that I can be alone. You know, it's okay to walk away from a tribe and be alone with yourself, right? And I hope that people will be able to take that on more and more. You know, like, we disagree all the time. It may look like on podcasts that we agree with everything and we're like yes people to all the stuff, or, you know, like, one thing is I challenge you, like, yeah, you do ask questions in a certain way that like makes me feel the teacher that you're not respecting me teaching you in that context, right? So it was like, hey, Judy, it's how you ask the question, right? It's not you question. I want you to question everything, please. It's just like how you question, right? But I also have to look at my own ego and say, why am I hurt that she asked that way? What's in me? And that's why they call it the shadow, right? Because why am I getting all pissed off and angry, right? That you just say, I'm just asking a question, and it's like, no, you're not, right? And maybe I'm like seeing a world because of my past or other programming or a spell. So I have to be honest and go, wow, maybe she was just asking a question, or maybe she wasn't gaslighting me, or, you know, it's like, that's what I was saying. Like, if we can just do that with ourselves, if we can just do that, I think, yeah, the world would be a better place, and everybody would be an individual. They're maturing. They see it is a long journey and a process. Everything's a process. You know, you're not gonna become a success overnight, right? It's really rare. It's most people have to work hard and struggle. Hopefully you're struggling, working hard towards something that you want to do with your life, because it is so limited. We almost lost our life so many times, and that was the thing. We're like, gosh, this can end. Am I gonna like go to my grave like doing something I hate?
But also having a whole stack of regrets.
Yeah.
I think that's almost a bit full circle of coming back, going, no, I will say sorry, no, I will put things right the best that I can, because I don't want to live a life of regret. There's been so many sad things that have happened so far. I don't want to hold that. It's too heavy. It's too much of a burden to hold. And I remember one thing that, is very simplified, but it works, and it still works for me now, is that what am I doing and why am I doing it? So for me, it was like, what is my motive? Am I doing something because I'm scared? Am I doing something basically because of fear? Or am I doing something because of love? And it was learning to know the difference. Because there's plenty of times that I've done nice things because I'm a nice person and I like doing things for other people, and, it could be quite practical and make stuff and cook things and bake things or whatever. But actually sometimes it was actually out of fear, because I really wanted them to love me. I really wanted them to accept me. And I was basically manipulating. I didn't mean to. That wasn't the intention. But it kind of was. And I'd like to understand and go, oh, right, okay, to break it right down and go, can you do everything that you do because you're motivated by love? There's so much that I did because I was motivated out of fear. And it was to kind of break that right down and be like, right, oh yes, love. Right, well, I can't really love anybody unless I love myself. And that's where the self-love comes in. And it's not the airy-fairy stuff. It is that day-to-day stuff of giving myself enough time to eat my food, brush my teeth, prepare proper food so I can actually have a nice or a healthy lunch, or whatever it is, or make sure that I have the time to go to that store to get the organic food, or the local suppliers or whatever, rather than just pick up whatever convenience food on the way because I'm rushing, because I haven't given myself enough time. And to me, it was always about time. It was always that to love myself is to give myself time. If I'm sore, rest. If I'm tired, rest. Have a sleep. Have a bath. Go out for a walk. If I want to run, go for a run. Whatever it was to love myself, to give myself the time. And then once I'd got that more established, because then I could really, truly love other people. There wasn't a motive behind it, because I wasn't needing them to make me feel better. I think that's all it is. It's like an energy exchange. And sometimes when you're not creating enough energy in yourself, you try and get it from other people. And some people do it in a hard way, in a horrible way, and they're basically bullying people and kind of like snatching it from people. But then other people would have kind of done it in a indirect kind of manipulating type way.
more sophisticated for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
But it's to kind of boil it all down, and I think for me it's understanding, yes, taking that time to think, right, why am I doing what am I doing? What am I doing it for? Who am I doing it for? And what's my motivation? And it's basically, and I think everything can be boiled down to love or fear. You mean, I've seen so many people act in so many different ways, particularly over the pandemic, particularly over the last few years, because they are literally ruled by fear. And I've been there, and I had most of my life there, and I don't want to go back there again. I can't. Like, I mentally can't go back there again and live in a fear state every day. Like, it made me physically sick. I mean, I was so sore in so many places in my body, but I was physically sick so often as well. It just destroyed me, and I can't do it anymore. So it is that standing in my truth. And it's hard because a lot of people don't get it, particularly if you're not following the agenda, particularly if you're not following what's coming across on, mainstream media, BBC News or whatever. But I've got to stand in my truth, and I've got to stand and know that I've got the right motivations. I'm doing my best to I'm still kind of figuring it out. I'm not too sure how to kind of form it, but that I'm basically being true to myself.
Yeah, you're doing your best.
It's like I've got that moral compass, and I'm following my own moral compass, and I'm listening to my intuition, because I switched that intuition off for most of my life, and I didn't rely on it, and I didn't trust it. And then when suddenly I couldn't rely and trust on other people, I felt lost because I didn't know myself. Like, there was times when I stood in the supermarket and I just cried, and I was obviously embarrassed, but I actually didn't know what food I liked. Like, I was so disconnected from myself. I didn't even know what I liked to eat, because I had never...
Because you were told what to eat.
Yeah, I was told, because I always cooked what I wanted to eat. I didn't really know what I actually liked. It was crazy. Like, I would put things in the basket and then go, actually, I don't really like that. But then I didn't even know what I did like. It was like, that's crazy when you're so far from yourself. You're so disconnected from yourself. And disconnection for me happened so many times, because when you're in a situation where it's really horrible, whether it's abusive or something scary is happening, temporarily you can disconnect mentally to basically save yourself from the pain of it all, because it could be too much to handle at that time. And that's a good protection mechanism that we have. But if you're doing it and it's happening again and again and again and again, you get totally disconnected. So you almost feel like you're in a computer game and your life isn't really your life. You don't feel like you're engaged within your body. It feels like you're almost like within a simulation and you're playing a role or you're playing a part. But you're not really fully engaged with yourself. It's a horrible way to live, and it's a horrible way to feel. And for me, literally, it felt like I was going mentally mad. And to get reconnected back in again. And for me, that the real true kind of starting moment for me, like a really big moment, was actually in the float tank, where I was by myself, nothing else going on. I was able to think the thoughts that I was thinking beforehand, where I was just about to have a panic attack. And I was able to critically think about those things, not feel overwhelmed, because the float tank makes you so calm that you can't really engage all that emotional stuff. Like, I actually tried, I couldn't. And I was able to just look at them and see them logically, without all the emotion, without all the background, without all the filters, without all the kind of negative input that had been put behind it. I could just see them for what they were. That was really fundamental. It was like a really big shift, and it was a part of that reconnection process. And connecting back into yourself is amazing. I mean, and I suppose that's the thing where, ultimately, like, I love you and I love you completely, and you're my soulmate. but I can't live your life and I can't make you happy. And also you can't live my life and you can't make me happy. You know, we're adding to each other's lives, and we're making it more beautiful and making this adventure more amazing together, being together, and I love it. But I had to do my work first, and I had to be connected back to myself and know that I'm responsible for me, for my happiness, for my peace, for my joy, for my inner healing, for whatever it is. And before, I always thought that everybody knew the answers and I didn't know the answers, and that's why I was always looking out for help in so many different areas. And it's like, no, it comes actually within. And sometimes it's you know, it feels like it's divine, that you're given knowledge or you're given words or moments. Like last night we went for a walk. Wow, we went for a walk. We wanted to see the moon. The full moon was out looking amazing. We could only see part of it through the clouds. There was a lunar eclipse, but we couldn't see it in Europe. I did look. I couldn't see it. But anyway, we went out for a wee walk about midnight. We do that quite often. I love walking at the start of the day and the end of the day. And we walked down to the park and we were looking at the star constellations. We were getting to know those ones, and we were looking at Gemini. And then suddenly it was like the biggest shooting star I have ever seen, you've ever seen. We don't even think it was a shooting star because it was just...
Well, there's no such thing. It's just materials flying into the atmosphere, right?
But it was huge, and it lasted for ages. And it like burnt up in like a shooting like ball, and you could see it light up, and it was like golden, and then it went white, and then it went blue, and then it went white, and it was just like, what did we just see? Like, I still can't...
Yeah, it was mind-blowing, because just when we thought it had reached this, like, crescendo, and we, like, screamed at that crescendo, it just got brighter and brighter, and we're like, ah! Like, holy shit! And I literally felt it in my heart, like, something burning in my heart. It was incredible, and we just were speechless, going like, what in the world did we just witness? And that was that, right? Like, I literally think about it like constantly. I tried to tag it because I don't want to forget that special moment that we had.
And that we both saw it. We were both looking at the same spot because we were talking about that star constellation. It was amazing. Yeah. Like, incredible. And it's like, you can't script stuff like that. No. Like, that's like way beyond, out of our control, out of our comprehension. It was like, what was it? But it's just how amazing it was, how beautiful it was.
Absolutely.
Like, what a gift.
It was amazing. Yeah. So we need to wrap up. That was deep, incredible, awesome conversation. A lot to think about, digest. And again, like, people, please stop, or don't listen to me, just maybe listen to the advice, right? Because this comes down to stop following something, right? A teacher, an authority, right? Like, you listen to the teachings. Try to find the gems, the wisdom, the insights. Try to sift through the crap, right? Because there are legit news organizations out there, but the problem is they put out truth, false, truth, false, truth. You know, it's like, but you think it's all true, right? And it's the same thing. Like, question everything. Question, not to be a dick about it, but like, literally question yourself too, right? Like, yes, we do have some kind of weird sixth sense. You know, you get goosebumps. Your stomach feels a certain way. Your heart feels a certain way, right? Gut instincts, right? That's why they call it that. But don't throw science away either, right? Like, but again, like, everybody's got an agenda. People have like jobs that they want to keep, or titles, right? Or they receive, you know, funding, right? Because the news on even the extreme conspiracy side is also can be really wacky, right? But there is truth to some of those too, because it's like, it doesn't, at least for me, I'm like, we're going to go into a whole other thing, but I just want to leave this, like, not everything that we see in history is completely true, right? You can watch an event on video and see it from your own lens, and it can be distorted, right? So no one really has it completely, but it's like, who can be the most accurate and admit when you're wrong? Like, no one gets it right 100% of the time, but it's like, who's the most accurate, who has the most tools, who can take the most data in and then make a decision based on that, or sometimes you get too much data. So it's understanding that there's nothing for sure or certain as far as we know. Like, science only knows up to a certain point. But again, things can be a double-edged sword. And, mathematics seems pretty straightforward, right? But then it gets a little wonky when you start getting into, like, atomics, past molecules and, like, quarks. And then they're going into, like, dark energy. Like, it's insane what's out there. So in the end, do your best, make mistakes, admit when you're wrong, and get at it again. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just doing a little bit every day. We're trying to talk to people where there has been some tensions, hopefully we can clear things out and be okay if we can't, but at least we know that we made the effort to address it, right? And it's not always going to be sunshines and rainbows, no. Right? It's going to be messy. There's going to be dark, stormy days, but just know that this too shall pass. So, any final words, Judy Floreal?
A little phrase that I read recently. Don't fight to be right. Make sure that you're kind. Being right isn't always the good thing. It's being kind. And I think that just boils right back down to everything with love. What are your motivations? Why are you on that diet? Why are you doing that exercise? Why are you engaging with that person or that organization? Or why are you making the decisions within your career or your marriage? Is it because of love or is it because of fear? To me, it just boils down to those two things, and it's motivate by love. Listen to your intuition. You have three brains: your brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain. And you need to do them in the order of your gut, your heart, and your brain. And keep them in that order. And your gut instinct is there. It's there for a reason. And sometimes you can't explain it and you don't understand why. But hindsight usually is the wonderful thing where it all comes together and it all makes sense. And that you're your only guide. Yes, other people are there that you can help to give you advice and wisdom and knowledge and take the gems, as you said, from it. But ultimately, you're on your journey and you're your best guide.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
And the great, wonderful, beautiful Judy Floreal. Mic drop. Woo!